Busy, written and illustrated by Roger Hargreaves, as read and adapted by Erica Lang. There has never been anybody quite like Mr. Busy. He could do things 10 times as fast as you or I could. For instance, if he was reading this book, he'd have finished it by now. He lived in a very busy-looking house, which he built himself, as you can see. It had lots of doors and windows, and you know what it was called? Weekend Cottage. Do you know why? Because that's how long it took him to build it. One fine summer morning, Mr. Busy was up bright and early at 6 o'clock. He jumped out of bed and took a bath, and brushed his teeth, and cooked his breakfast, and ate his breakfast, and read the paper, and washed up, and made his bed, and cleaned the house from top to bottom. By that time it was 7 o'clock. Busy Mr. Busy. Now, next door to Mr. Busy lived someone who wasn't quite such a busy person. In fact, he was a very unbusy person. Mr. Slow. If he was reading this book, he'd read it like this. He'd still be on the first page. And that same fine summer morning, at 5 after 7, when Mr. Busy knocked at his door, Mr. Slow was fast asleep in bed. He had gone to bed for an afternoon nap the day before, and somehow hadn't awakened until he heard Mr. Busy knocking at his door. "Who's that knocking at my door?" he called downstairs. "Good morning," cried Mr. Busy. "Can I come in?" And without waiting for an answer, he went inside. "Where are you?" he called. "Upstairs," came the slow reply. So Mr. Busy went up the stairs 2 at a time. "Good heavens," he said, "you're still in bed." And he made Mr. Slow get up. And he made his bed for him, and cooked his breakfast for him, and cleaned his house for him. Poor Mr. Slow. He hated to be rushed and fussed over. "Okay," said Mr. Busy briskly. "It's a fine day. Let's go on a picnic." Mr. Slow made a face. "I don't like picnics," he complained. "Nonsense," replied Mr. Busy, and busied himself in Mr. Slow's kitchen, making a picnic lunch for the two of them. It took him a minute and a half. "Okay," he cried. When he'd finished, "Off we go!" and hurried Mr. Slow out his front door, and off they went. As you can imagine, Mr. Busy walks extremely quickly. And, as you can imagine, Mr. Slow doesn't. So, by the time Mr. Busy had walked a mile, do you know how far Mr. Slow had walked? To his own garden gate. Mr. Busy hurried back. "Come on," he cried impatiently. "Hurry up." "Hurry up," replied Mr. Slow. "Impossible." "Oh, all right," said Mr. Busy. "We'll have a picnic in your garden. Wait a minute, though," he added. "The grass needs cutting." And he rushed back to Weekend Cottage, and he rushed back again with his lawnmower, and he rushed up and down cutting Mr. Slow's lawn. It took him 2.5 minutes. It would have taken him 2 minutes, but he had to mow around Mr. Slow, who couldn't get out of the way in time. "Okay," cried Mr. Busy, "picnic time!" And together on that fine summer day they had a fine picnic. Well, actually, Mr. Busy had a finer picnic than Mr. Slow, because he ate more quickly and had most of the food. Mr. Busy stretched out on the grass. "That was fun," he said. "I like picnics." "You do. I don't," said Mr. Slow. "Tell you what," went on Mr. Busy, ignoring him. "Tomorrow we'll go on a real picnic out in the country." Mr. Slow made a face. "And," went on Mr. Busy, "in order to do that and get you out into the country, I'll have to call on you earlier than I did this morning." Mr. Slow made another face. "See you tomorrow, then," said Mr. Busy, and went home and cleaned his house from top to bottom. The following morning, Mr. Busy jumped out of his bed at 5 o'clock and took a bath and brushed his teeth and cooked his breakfast and ate his breakfast and read the paper and washed up and made his bed and cleaned the house from top to bottom. By that time, it was 6 o'clock. He went and knocked on Mr. Slow's front door. Come on, he cried. "Time to be up and about. Picnic day." No reply. "Come on," cried Mr. Busy again. No reply. Mr. Busy went inside, and he went up the steps 3 at a time and into Mr. Slow's bedroom expecting to find him in bed. But he wasn't. And he wasn't anywhere upstairs, and he wasn't anywhere downstairs. "Drat," said Mr. Busy. "I wonder where he's gone." Where Mr. Slow had gone was under his bed. To hide. He didn't want to go on any picnic. Not he. "Drat," said Mr. Busy again. "That means I'll have to go on a picnic all by myself." Under his bed, Mr. Slow smiled a slow smile. "What a good idea," he said, and went to sleep, snoring very slowly.